Hi, guys, and welcome back to Too Much. I have waited 14 weeks to record and post this episode. It's something that most of you, if not all of you, have been questioning, wondering about, reaching out to me about, and I'm finally ready to talk about it. It's been 2 months since I have been erased from the existence of my own podcast. 2 months since the Unbothered podcast has been operating on my accounts without my consent and without compensating me for my half of the business as a 50-50 partner. I am at a loss and I am done keeping quiet. There is only one person whose peace my silence is keeping, and it is not mine. Everything I'm about to say is irrefutable, comes bearing receipts, and is completely factual. This is the account of what actually happened to my podcast, Unhinged. For the purpose of keeping this episode just succinct, clear, and organized, I'm going to have my laptop with me because I have written out this entire episode, and it is 21 pages long. I waited 14 episodes to do this because I wanted the time to be right. I was actually advised by someone when I was ideating and starting the podcast to launch with this, to make this episode 1. But against a lot of people's opinions, I said no. I wanted to give Too Much its own space. I didn't want it to come from a place of negativity, and I didn't want it to be capitalizing on the drama. So I launched, I established it, and I was waiting until I was thinking clearly, until I was emotionally ready, and until the time was right. And that time is now. And don't get me wrong, even though I am feeling emotionally ready, my heart's racing right now. I'm nervous as hell, but I know this is right and I know it needs to be done. So let's go down the rabbit hole, shall we? As a disclaimer, pretty much this entire thing is going to be technical with dates, receipts, quotes. My goal is to keep the emotion out of this. And if I do share any of my opinions, I will make sure you know it. All you need to know is what has taken place between January 3rd, 2025 and today. But if you are new here and you're like, what the fuck is this girl talking about? Yet you are intrigued, I am going to give you a very brief history of Unhinged and what kind of went down. In May of 2023, I started Unhinged with this girl that I hardly knew. The partnership was 50-50 from the start. And although there was no official contract in place, there are checklists on checklists that kept track of our equal split of work for the last year and a half. Thousands of texts and emails citing these checks and balances, a system that we put in place to ensure this equal split. And we even assigned each other all of the daily tasks that needed to be done. And this included graphic design, posting, caption writing, episode descriptions, communication with external brands, every single Instagram post, every single Instagram story. If you saw it, we agreed on it. We even split up who created each account. For example, I created the Instagram, the Spotify, and the Gmail accounts. My co-host created the TikTok, and I'm sure among other accounts. But to me, that was just splitting the workload, something I would later come to regret. It has been like that since day one. We treated it as a business. Sure, there were times where maybe I did a little more or she did a little more, but that is the dynamic of a partnership. We supported each other. So we launched our first episode, I believe, on June 28th, 2023, and it quickly exploded after that. Within 3 months, we were going viral, and after 16 months, we had hit over 600,000 followers across all platforms. Now, truthfully, the demise of the relationship began about 3 months after the launch. Tensions became a little bit high when my New York City-based partner, who I expected to run a business with out of New York City, moved to Los Angeles, making it a bi-coastal podcast. Now, naturally, this threw a wrench into things, into the processes, into the relationship, on both sides. But that's really where it began. That is all I'm going to say about the relationship between us prior to January 1st, 2025, because it doesn't matter. That will turn into she said, she said. And ultimately, the one thing that matters is that I was unhappy. And I'm not saying that I was the only one that was unhappy, but I am not responsible for how someone else chooses to make themselves happy. When I am unhappy, I make a change. Because if you are not changing it, you are choosing it. So after giving it my all for over a year, sort of the peak, or what I thought was the peak of my unhappiness, started in July of 2024. I started to seriously consider whether or not I was going to stay in this or whether or not this was going to last. These were just thoughts. It took me 6 months to deliberate if I truly wanted to walk away. 6 months to try and make it work one last time. And 6 months to muster up the courage to actually walk away. Because it was hard. I put everything into Unhinged. And I did not want to walk away. But I knew I had to. For my mental health, for myself, and for my future. We even had one last coming to Jesus moment in September where we both really tried to make it work, but ultimately there was no change. It didn't feel salvageable. And I knew what I had to do. And that was end the podcast. Now, this portion of the episode is going to be very technical because it has to be. This has been an extremely nuanced situation, and without knowing all of the details, no one can make an informed opinion on the matter. And up until now, you have only had one side of things. So, on December 30th, like I said, my patience was running thin with where things stood for our relationship. And again, I am sure that is on both sides, but I cannot control what someone else does. This is just the actions that I chose to take based on how I was feeling. I was given an ultimatum by my co-host that was unreasonable and was lacking respect for myself and my time, in my opinion. And that was the turning point. I was pushed too far, and the straw finally broke the camel's back. On December 31st, I sent my co-host a text letting her know that I was done and that I wanted to begin the dissolution process. There was some back and forth text exchange, but for the purpose of the account of what went down, all you need to know is that I stated my discontent, she stated hers, but I made up my mind and I said I was done. This was New Year's Eve, so I went offline and I went out and I celebrated what I knew was going to be an amazing year to come. On January 2nd, I received a text asking if I would be, and I quote, quitting the podcast. And if I did not respond to that, it would be assumed that I was. So I responded back stating it needs to be very clear that without the two of us, Unhinged would not exist. Which is reasonable, given it was a 50-50 partnership, and I could acknowledge that. I can acknowledge that without the two of us together, it can't exist. It can't go on. The platforms cannot go on. And at that point, I told her to expect a detailed email from me in the coming days. So on January 3rd, I sent my first formal notice of my exit from Unhinged. I provided my reasons. I provided a proposal of what I think the dissolution should look like. And I even gave one last-ditch effort of what I thought we could change to maybe salvage it. But I explained, I have a gut feeling in my heart that this just cannot go on, and we need to do what's in both of our best interests and cut our losses. This entire email and every email that I'm going to reference from here on out is in my Instagram profile highlights. On Life of Emma page, if you go to it, I have posted every single email in this email thread. None of it is doctored. I did black out my email so you guys wouldn't have my personal email, but every single full email is in there. So if you would like to follow along with this story, feel free. Now here's where it gets interesting. My business partner, who I spoke to every single day for 18 months, ghosted me for 25 days. I sent the first email on January 3rd, 2025, and over that weekend, TikToks continued to go up on our accounts. My co-host was posting from her personal account in our shared broadcast channel, self-promoting, telling people to follow her personal account, which is never something we've ever done. And this was all really, really frustrating for me to see, but I did send the email on a Friday. So I was like, she can have a couple days to get back to me, but it was annoying, I'm not gonna lie. On January 7th, now 4 days after the initial email was sent, a brand that we had signed a deal with reached out to us asking a question via text. I had still not received a response from my co-host. And without consulting me, which was a standard operating procedure, she responded to the brand, alluding to our disarray and claiming that we would be getting back to them, which in my mind, in my opinion, is completely unprofessional. So on January 8th, I sent my second email. I followed up with my co-host explaining that discussing the future of our podcast was the top priority, and that should be handled before responding to brands, and especially before writing in our broadcast channel, self-promoting. So I urged her to get back to me. Now, Simultaneously, unfortunately, on this day, the LA fires started. According to Google, they started on January 7th, 4 days after I sent the initial email. Now, I used to live in LA for 7 years. My closest friends live in LA. I was extremely concerned for the safety of those who lived in LA and their homes, their lives, I was extremely upset about the entire situation. I only say this because we'll get to this, but there were some statements made about me, painting me in a not so great light about me being an empathetic person. We were running a business. I spoke to this person every single day for 18 months, and I was being ignored while other aspects of our business were being worked on and attended to. It is completely reasonable for me to send a follow-up email. I think it's reasonable to send a text to your co-host just saying, hey, going through a lot right now. Can we just table this to the end of the month? I am an empathetic and reasonable person. I would have said, sure, no problem. This could wait. I probably would have explained at that point, I do plan on starting my own podcast, so I'm going to move ahead with that. But we can figure out what's happening with Unhinged later. Your safety is a priority. That is how I would have responded. And I'm not just saying that hindsight. But that did not happen. Instead, the ghosting continued. So to take it back for a second away from this timeline, when I made the decision to walk away from Unhinged, it was my intention to start my own podcast. I thought about negotiating with my co-host who would take which platform. Maybe I keep Instagram, you keep TikTok, because I created the Instagram, she created the TikTok, whatever. But ultimately, I did not want to start something that wasn't completely mine, something that I would forever have to attribute the success to someone else. You know, if I would reach a milestone, it would always be in the back of my mind. Well, I had a 100K follower buffer that I started off with. So no, I didn't grow this from the ground up. That just to me is not acceptable. It's not satisfying. I also wouldn't want to take that credit from someone else. I wanted a clean slate, something I could be proud of and call my own, which is why I moved to dissolve the Unhinged accounts or be bought out for my half, because that is how business works. On January 6th, I had gotten back from Florida from celebrating New Year's, and I got to fucking work. I had sent my intent to exit, and I was not taking that back. So I knew the future for Unhinged was just a matter of how we were going to end it. So why wait to start something that I wanted to do on my own? On January 7th, I came up with the name. I got the social media accounts. I booked the studio for the following week to record my first 2 episodes, which was not going to be about any of this breakup. Now, some of you may be wondering, why rush it? Why not just wait until this is all done? But for a little insight for you into the world of podcasting, consistency is key. If someone listens to your podcast, they go every Tuesday morning and they listen the same time, the same day, every week. It was my co-host's turn to fly out to New York to record our next batch of episodes. However, that did not happen. And Unhinged would run out of episodes on January 7th. So, because I'm a business person, once I realized that that would be our last episode, and I knew I was moving forward with the end of Unhinged, I thought it would be smart to provide an alternative for the Unhinged community who wanted to still follow me, to give them a new podcast, to give them a new place to go on Tuesday morning. I couldn't get it together by the 14th because that literally would have been 1 week, but I planned to launch the following week, January 21st. I went all gas, no brakes to make it across the finish line. So in 2 weeks, to put it into perspective, I came up with the name, the concept, the fonts, the colors, the aesthetic, programmed the first 10 episodes, booked my photo shoot, made the cover art, came up with the episode launch graphics, edited the episodes, edited the first batch of TikToks, and also got together a launch party for 9 days post-launch. What you see now is all me. Just in case anyone questions whether or not I contributed to the creative behind Unhinged. Now back to the timeline of things. On January 8th, I still heard nothing. I gave it another week. January 14th was going to be our first Tuesday without launching an episode. So we had an obligation to let our audience know that there was not going to be an episode launching that day. Now, since 2 weeks had gone by since my first attempt at getting in touch, I started consulting with a couple of lawyers. Nothing official yet, but I needed to get my ducks in a row. And I was going to do this by the book with integrity. I was advised to send a formal notice of dissolution and propose the next steps. And what was made clear to me was that even though we did not have a contract on paper, under New York state law, which is where we started the podcast, we are considered an implied partnership, which holds up in the court of law, and that we are both co-owners of this podcast and all of its associated accounts. due to the split of work, profit sharing, the name's use in commerce, and public representation as co-owners. I mean, it was even in both of our Instagram bios. Half of Unhinged. So on January 13th, I sent a formal notice of dissolution via email. I opened up the email by saying, I hope you are staying safe. And then I laid out what dissolving the podcast would look like. And I closed it by saying, and I quote, I want this process to reflect the respect we've shared throughout this partnership, and I'm committed to working with you to finalize the details fairly and promptly. Please let me know if you have any questions, suggestions, or require clarification on any of the points. If you are in agreement with the above terms, please confirm by signing the following page. Or let's schedule a time to discuss further adjustments. So I said that to essentially be like, I want to dissolve, but if you would, like to keep it, like to buy me out, let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. My gosh, this is very frustrating. So with this, I also sent a suggested story that we would post the next day, essentially saying to our audience that we weren't going to have an episode go live that day. My initial thought was to maybe say it's because of the LA fires, but then I thought that would be a lie because that is not why we are taking a pause. So I sent a story to my co-host in this email that said, hi guys, we are taking a pause this week. If you're in need of a good laugh, here's another episode you can watch instead. That was it. Plain, blunt, to the point. I also sent another story to be posted on January 21st announcing the end of Unhinged. Again, it was brief, to the point, and it said if you would like to keep up with Emma, you can find her here. And if you'd like to keep up with co-host, you can find her here with both respective tags. Again, I received no response. However, later that night, I went on Instagram and I saw a story go live on our shared account that said, we are taking a pause because of the fires. Let me remind you, still no communication, none. And I had just sent an email a couple hours ago with a formal notice of dissolution and asking her to approve my suggested story. I'm still asking for approval because that was the checks and balance system that we had in place. Nothing like this went live without discussing it. So I went onto our account, I took a screenshot, I took the story down, and I texted her and I said, I just sent you a notice of dissolution. You cannot be posting things like this without discussing it with me first. Please answer me. Again, no response. That was January 13th, 10 days after the initial attempt. On January 17th, officially 2 weeks after I sent my first attempt at amicably dissolving the podcast, I was at wit's end. I needed to do something. I asked a lawyer, how do I get her to respond if I'm not like banging on her actual door? Like what do I do? I was moving ahead with my launch of Too Much. I just felt completely at a loss. I did not know what to do. The legal advice I received was to change 1 to 2 passwords while offering to share the passwords directly to my co-host in efforts to initiate a conversation, to get her attention, and hopefully try to just get a response. So that's what I did. It was a business move and a legal one. What I was told by this lawyer was that as long as there was no proof that I withheld the passwords and there was proof that I offered them up, that this was totally legal to do. So I did it. I changed only the Instagram and TikTok passwords, and I did it at the exact same time as sending an email to my co-host explaining why I did it, what I was doing, and offering the new login credentials back. And what I stated was that I would happily give her the new passwords if she would give me a phone call to ensure secure transfer of information. And while we're on the call, we could discuss the future of Unhinged. I shit you not, I did this at the exact same time because I made sure I did not want there to be any. I changed, and then 2 hours later, I sent the email, or even a minute later. I wanted it to be at the exact same time. So I went like this. Now this is where things get ugly. Again, I got no response. I believe we're at email 4 and day 14. So instead of a response within a few hours, I was locked out of not only our Instagram and TikTok, but every single joint account that I had with my business partner. I'm talking Spotify, which is our streaming host, which means Apple, Amazon, Audible, everything. Our Gmail account, our joint email that we communicated with brands on, with external partners, everyone. So essentially all of my contacts I was locked out of. Our Descript account, which is what we edit all of the episodes on. All of our content lives in there, all of our TikToks, everything. And every other social media platform that we had, but those are the important ones. Now, unlike what I did, I was not given any notice. There was no communication, and there was no offer of regaining access. And I have been locked out ever since. So as you can imagine, I was stunned. I was completely shocked. I also was confused at how the fuck this just happened because I thought I just changed the password. It's like, what? But I guess that was my millennial side of me showing because I don't know how she did it. So I was bugging out. I called my lawyer friend right away and I was like, what the fuck do I do? But ultimately I decided to take a beat and recalibrate because cooler heads prevail. That night, Mr. Wright ironically was taking me to see Wicked for my Christmas gift. And he had put a lot of effort into it. And I was not going to let this, no pun intended, bring me down. Wasn't going to let it bring me down. So I put my phone away and I went out to dinner with him. I had a fucking 10 glasses of wine and we had a great time. I was sobbing throughout the entire thing because it was a brunette and a blonde fighting. And one of them wasn't going to let them bring them down and was not going to care what everyone's perspective of her was and was going to show the world what she was made of, even though she was betrayed by her friend. It was very ironic, very odd. Anyways, had a great night. Took the weekend to think about it all. I was planning to launch Too Much on that following Tuesday, January 21st. So I was like, stay focused. Don't get petty. Let's fucking go. We can do this. She just locked me out. There was nothing posted yet. I will figure this out. And that Tuesday was going to mark 19 days since I had spoken to my business partner. So I obviously wanted to get it all sorted out before we launched, but I wasn't going to let it slow me down. So I moved forward and I introduced Too Much to the world. After, of course, all of the celebratory feedback that I got and all the excitement on social media, I started to receive a lot of questions. A lot of people being like, what the fuck happened to Unhinged? What is going on? What is this new podcast? And I felt the audience needed to and deserved to know the position that I was in and why I was doing this. So I put together a video that I posted on Instagram later that day on my personal account, explaining my reality. Mind you, my personal account, I think at that time had 19,000 followers. So just a detail. Anyways, I filmed the thing 5 times. I sent it around to my manager at the time, to someone who consulted me on a few things, to my lawyer friend, to my boyfriend. I sent it to everyone. And it was 6 minutes long. I explained all of this, including that I changed the Instagram and TikTok passwords first and then that it got changed on me. However, Instagram does not let you post a reel that's longer than 3 minutes. And this was 6 minutes. So I had to cut out 90% of the details and I decided to just boil it down to what was really important. And that was that I no longer had access to the Unhinged accounts. I had no idea what the fuck was going on. I hadn't heard from my co-host. I've just been locked out of everything, including my email and our streaming platforms. So I no longer had control of the accounts and I had no knowledge or consent of what was going to go up on the accounts going forward. That is what I told my audience. Did I leave out my little piece? Yeah, sure. But sorry, I only had 3 minutes and I was not going to put it on the podcast. It was not going to be my first episode. So that's what I chose to do. Did it bite me in the ass? A little bit. But I've been nothing but honest with you guys. So after I posted that, I got 1 to 2 negative comments, but the rest of it was all really supportive and amazing. And I still didn't hear anything from my co-host on January 21st. So honestly, after that, I thought everything was fine. But boy, was I wrong. For the next 6 days after launch, everything went incredibly well. I was on a high. I was so excited for the future. I, of course, was really sad about what was happening with Unhinged, and I was really confused, but I was just going to trust the process. And I was like, clearly, this is what I was meant to do. This redirection was meant for me because things are going well, and I'm feeling really fucking good about it. On January 27th, now 24 days after my first attempted communication, I heard from my co-host for the first time. She essentially told me that she was going to keep Unhinged, and she claimed that she owned all of the platforms because allegedly she started them, aka signed us up, and that she was willing to give me 15% of the revenue for the next 3 months. Still, when I say this out loud, I am at a loss for words. I have never been so insulted in my entire life. And like I said before, every aspect, down to email responses to brands, the posting schedule, the editing schedule, every aspect of that podcast was a 50-50 split. Even the Instagram posts were 1-to-1. Today, me, tomorrow, you. And I was being told that my contribution for the last year and a half was only worth 15% of what a 600,000 follower brand would bring in for the next 3 months. The other option that I was provided was 50% of the next 3 brand deals, which was equally as insulting. So I wrote out this long emotional email, basically being like, how dare you, trying to prove in an email my contribution and how I was a 50-50 partner and how insane this was. But then I stopped and I thought to myself, do not waste your fucking breath. Because you cannot reason with logic with an illogical person, in my opinion. So I responded back with 2 sentences. I said that I was going to review her claims and her proposal with my lawyer and prepare a counterproposal that I would share with her sometime next week when I'm ready. And until that is figured out and decided between the 2 of us, that nothing is to be posted or done to the Unhinged accounts. I got a response later that night saying, great, I'm so glad that you are willing to settle this amicably. But however, since I'm going to be continuing with the Unhinged accounts, we're going to need to settle this quicker and I'm going to need a response by Monday. Naturally, this pissed me off because 1, how can you give me a deadline when you've just ghosted me for 25 days? Doesn't really seem fair. Number 2, you locked me out of all of my accounts. And number 3, you just provided me an insulting offer, implying that I practically had nothing to do with the success of Unhinged. So I responded back and I laid it out very clearly. I explained under New York state law, we have an implied partnership and 50-50 ownership given our equal contributions, our profit sharing, and public representation as co-owners. I then laid out that within an implied partnership, we have equally contributed to the podcast growth, shared responsibilities, and split profits 50-50. And under partnership law, this establishes joint ownership, intellectual property, and brand name. Trademark law prioritizes use in commerce, not just who thought of the name. We have both used the brand equally in all public-facing aspects. Because, sorry, I don't think I mentioned that. She claimed that she also owned it because she came up with the name. Social media accounts. Simply creating the accounts does not grant exclusive ownership, as they represent a joint business asset that we both actively manage. Finally, legal precedent. If one party contributes equally and profits are shared, they cannot be excluded from ownership after the fact. I made it clear that I was dissatisfied with the offer and that I am in my right to make a counterproposal in a timeline that is suitable to me. And until that is done, the accounts are not to be touched. Neither of us have the right to unilaterally control or exclude the other without mutual agreement. I then said, I tried to carry this out amicably 28 days ago, but this was completely mishandled, and the way that you are choosing to continue to handle it is insulting. If you needed time to process on January 3rd out of respect for your business partner, all you needed to do was send a quick note asking for more time, but instead you ignored numerous attempts at communication. It has never been my intention for this to get here, but if necessary, I reserve the right to take legal action to protect my interests. Again, that is all in my Instagram story highlights. It has been up there since February 4th, so feel free to read the entire email. I am not hiding a goddamn thing. So, surprise, I never received a response. I followed up the next day, January 31st, also my birthday, to request my rightful access back to the accounts while I prepare my counterproposal. Now, if you remember earlier on in this episode, when I was advised by my lawyer to change the 2 passwords, the only way it would not be illegal is if there's no proof of the passwords being withheld, and there is proof that the new passwords are being offered up to your counterpart. So that's what I did. However, my request to regain access on January 31st with a deadline of end of day was ignored. I sent another follow-up on February 1st requesting access back to my owned accounts, but again, they were withheld from me. So on February 4th, 2025, I woke up to the unthinkable. My podcast, Unhinged, was gone. I was erased from its existence. And in its place was a new podcast, Unbothered. And there was an actual video about me using my name on my platforms. So if it's not clear what this all means, all of the work that I had done for a year and a half, every word I put out into the world, every single Instagram post, graphic that I made, reel, was gone. The logo was changed. I was deleted from the bio. Every tagged video of me was gone. Every single one of the 80 episodes that we released on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon was gone. The podcast itself was changed across every single platform. Yet there were still 93,000 Instagram followers, 500,000 followers on TikTok, 20,000 followers on Spotify. Every one of those 600,000 people consented to follow Unhinged, not Unbothered. The 430 reviews left on the Unhinged account, those stayed. Those are still there, even though the episodes that they corresponded with were gone. So to an onlooker who doesn't really know how podcasts work, they come to this new podcast, they see Unbothered, and it has 430, 4-star reviews. Wow, this podcast must be amazing. And the kicker was that I was blocked from seeing any of this. And so were all of my friends and all of my family members. Anyone who wanted to come to bat for me or try to support me was blocked. To me, that doesn't really seem like the behavior of someone who's doing something innocent, in my opinion. So this was 6 a.m. on February 4th. I sat in my living room for about an hour, just completely in shock, knees up on the couch, just like, what the fuck just happened? It's my account, but it's a different name. It's the same studio, but someone else is sitting in my chair. It's practically the same branding, just a different logo and different colors. And oddly enough, the colors seemed really similar to Too Much. So I'm watching this video about myself at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. The email that I sent, specifically the one on January 17th, was embedded in the video as an overlay. And the claim was that this was an email proving that Emma changed the passwords first, that she was the one who locked me out, not me. However, she took out the portion where I said, give me a call and I will give you the new passwords. The passwords that I changed were done with the sole purpose of initiating a conversation with my business partner. The passwords that were changed by my ex-co-host were done to lock me out, never offering me access back. I don't have time to clear up all of the other points in that video, but a couple highlights that I have. She had to compare us to Call Her Daddy, and that split. Except the difference with that was that was all legal, and that all had contracts in place, and that was done by the book. And lastly, bringing the fires into it. To me, that is completely inappropriate to capitalize on other people's trauma to benefit you and how you are painted in this situation. I sent my first email 5 days before the fires started. And most importantly, fires don't give you an excuse to steal a business, in my opinion. Anyways, in this moment of crisis, my brain truthfully just started mapping out every possible route I could take and what each outcome would be. I thought about posting a long-ass TikTok rebuttal video right then and there. But then I thought that will accomplish nothing. Also, I was fucking furious, so God knows what would have come out of my mouth. But I took my own advice. And I sat there and I was in my apartment by myself. Mr. Wright was at the gym because it was literally 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, I am okay. My body's okay. Mr. Wright is okay. My family's okay. I am physically okay. So after taking a minute and just really trying to decide what to do, I knew I wanted to act because I wasn't going to let this just like happen on the internet. I decided I was going to post these screenshots of our email communication. I had nothing to hide. I still don't. So to me, I just felt I needed to calmly and clearly refute what was being said. And this was the best way I could have thought to do so because there was a doctored email out there that I sent and people needed to see the full email. They needed to see the full picture. So that's what I did. Posted that on my Instagram story highlights. It's still there. That's when that happened. And like I said, I was blocked. And honestly, it was almost lucky that I was because I was not able to see what was going on. But I did have some friends who weren't blocked. And they were sending me screenshots of the pro Emma comments being left on the video on Instagram and Spotify that were also one by one being deleted. So the next thing I did, I got a fucking lawyer. Since February 4th, I have been fighting 2 battles. Number 1 is to right the wrong that has been done to me. And number 2 is to make the success of Too Much my greatest revenge. I have tried to keep my head down, stay focused on my success, and be the bigger person. But I am human. And this has been harrowing. As much as I try to be strong every single day and just keep fucking pushing forward, I have not gotten a good night's sleep in 2.5 months. Watching something I created be stolen, grown, and even celebrated, I don't even have words for it. It's fucking awful. We sent a cease and desist letter on February 12th. Nothing happened. But that is where the communication began with my lawyer and my ex-co-host lawyer. For 2 months straight, my lawyer has been going back and forth with hers to come to a settlement that would be fair for both of us. But it has been unsuccessful. I tried to tell myself that I don't care what people think. Keep working. The truth will reveal itself. I know my truth. Ignore the noise. But it still bothered me. And it bothered me so much that I started to question myself. Do I care? Because it seems like I do. And then I realized, if I did something that people don't agree with and they started talking shit, that's fine. I can own my actions and deal with consequences because I know how to take accountability. So I wouldn't care what's said. But when untruths are told about me and my character to the very people whose trust I put so much effort into earning, that's when I care. I also understand that I am the one who wanted to walk away from Unhinged. However, when you are in business with someone who is your equal partner, you own 50%. I wanted to dissolve the platforms completely because, in my eyes, it is not fair for one person to ride the coattails of what we created together. I was also confident in myself that I could do this on my own. I grew one podcast, I could do it again. But of course, I know dissolving is not the only course of action in business. If one person wants to continue on with the business and own 100% of it, they must purchase the 50% that they do not own in one form or another, however they want to compensate the business partner for that 50%. And that price is calculated based on the valuation of the business, the current revenue stream, and the partner's contribution. In the Oxford Dictionary, the definition of stealing is the act of taking another person's property, intellectual or physical, without permission or legal right and without intending to return it. As of this moment, and for the last 2.5 months, Unbothered is operating on the Unhinged accounts without my permission, without my consent, and with no compensation paid to me for my half of the business. Also, to clear something up, if you didn't catch me saying this earlier, I started the Spotify account and the Instagram account and the Gmail account. That's something that I never thought would matter, but since my ex-co-host is claiming that she started them all, and that because of that, that gives her sole ownership and the right to keep the accounts, I just wanted to make that known. Also, I have written evidence of myself notifying my ex-co-host that I created the Instagram account on May 23rd, 2023, providing her the login credentials. And then another written piece of evidence on June 28th, notifying my co-host that I started the Gmail account and the Spotify account and providing the login credentials. To which both she responded, "Thank you so much," acknowledging that I did so. The platforms Unbothered is operating on, they are my property, and Unhinged and all of my intellectual property was deleted without my permission. What they are doing is wrong, in my opinion. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. They're just social media accounts, but this is so much bigger than that. This was becoming my main source of income. The way podcasts make money is based on the number of streams and downloads that you have. So every time someone listens, that's a stream/download. And these episodic downloads never go away. They accumulate over time, even if an episode is deleted. These are things that you cannot see as a user, but networks, agencies, brands, they can see them and they ask for those numbers. That is the number that they are looking for to decide how much they are going to pay you. So to take what was Unhinged and to slap a new name on it, it's not starting a new podcast. All of the data that I contributed to is still there on the back end. So if a brand were to come to Unbothered and say, "Hey, we would like to work with you guys, what are your all-time downloads?" They would give a number that came from another podcast, a number earned by the content produced by that podcast. And the amount that they would get paid is directly based on that number. Same thing with the reviews. What's the metric that you notice when you go to watch something, whether it's a movie or a podcast? You look at the reviews. That's what makes you watch something, the ratings. And keeping those ratings there is completely misleading to the public, in my opinion. So in the spirit of transparency, my proposal in this settlement was the following. Number one, my ex-co-host could keep the Instagram and TikTok if I am fairly paid an agreed upon amount that reflects my 50% contribution to the podcast and all that I invested in it. And number two, that the streaming platforms be deleted and neither of us would keep them. That's the Spotify, the Apple, the Amazon, all of those, because the number of followers are not visible to the public. The back-end data is solely due to my time on the podcast with my co-host, and the reviews do not reflect that of the current show operating on the account. Therefore, they would be monetizing at a much higher level, and I would have no access to the revenue that is rightfully mine. Towards the end, which is ultimately the height of our success on Unhinged, we were making around $20,000 a month. So my proposal reflected that. After 2 months of going back and forth on this settlement, we have come to an impasse. This past week, I was offered $5,000 for Unbothered to continue operating on my owned accounts. $5,000 for a 600,000 follower brand. We were quoting brands at $8,000 to $12,000 per TikTok. And that is what my ex-co-host is offering me. Now, in business, if you cannot afford or you refuse to pay someone for their half of the business, the result is not that you get to just refuse and keep going and keep using the business and running it as usual. You forfeit the right to keep the business. For either of us to keep the business, it gets dissolved. Yet Unbothered is still up and running on those accounts. And that is why I'm here, telling you the account of what is currently going on, the truth that is being kept from you. I hate that I even feel I need to explain this to you, but we truly split everything. All of the editing. We would get an episode back from the studio. One person this week would do the first pass, the other person would do the second pass. One person would do the first pass at the graphic, then the other person would do the second pass. This whole thing was flip-flop the second week. Everything had such checks and balances in place. I did at a minimum 50% of all of the graphic design, including coming up with the logo. My acid story on TikTok made us $5,000 and got us around 200,000 followers. The story about me sleeping with a murderer, that got us 100,000 followers and a couple grand. I brought something to the table and I know my worth, and it is far more than $5,000 or 15% of revenue for the next 3 months. There is still to this day no acknowledgement of my 50-50 share. My co-host continues to capitalize and monetize on what we built together. And the audience I helped grow thinks that I'm the villain because of her words, which is why I'm speaking out now. This has gone on far too long. I don't know what's going to happen after I post this, but the way I've been treated throughout this process and the way my contribution and participation to Unhinged has been boiled down to practically nothing is something that I will not stand for. You, the audience, deserve to know the real truth, and I certainly will not keep that from you. Am I risking the public's perception of me by sharing this? Yeah, probably. But her and I both know the truth. And I believe in my heart, as long as I am honest with the world and only try to put good out into it, the universe will take care of me. I am trying my fucking hardest to trust this process. I've dealt with it for the past 2.5 months. What's a little more abuse? The truth is worth it to me. I always preach to you guys, rejection is redirection. Do not take shit. Keep your head up. Keep going. Keep pushing. Look for silver linings. Look for lessons. Find the good in the bad. And I practice what I preach. I have taken a couple lessons from this, and hopefully you will too. Number one being, do not get into business with people that you don't know. Do I regret it? No, because I wouldn't be sitting here now and I wouldn't have been able to reach all of you, but I definitely wouldn't advise it. Number two, I don't care who you get into business with. If it's your best goddamn friend, your sister, your mother, your cousin, an acquaintance, get a contract in place. Like, it doesn't need to be in one person's favor or another. Just get something in writing, dear God. That is my biggest regret. And number three, there is not enough out there protecting the creator. The creator marketplace has outpaced the legal system and even the terms and agreements on these streaming platforms. I have felt so unprotected and so at a loss. So I'm definitely going to be smarter about all of this going forward. So what am I looking to get out of this last hour of my trauma dump and factual account of what I'm currently going through? Firstly, a good night's sleep. I have been so pent up trying to stay quiet about this and trying to be the bigger person and let the legal system do its thing, telling myself everything will work out. But you know what? It hasn't been. So I'm getting in the driver's seat. Number two, a resolution. I am still open to finding one, whether that be a fair, agreed upon compensation for my half of the business or the accounts being shut down because someone simply cannot get away with this. Number three, the trust back from the audience we grew. People who maybe thought they knew me and then heard these untruths said about me and maybe changed their mind. I hope you can see that this entire episode has been from the bottom of my heart, that I am as raw right now as I can possibly be, and that I am just pleading for support and for compassion and people to stick with me on this journey that I am going on. Because every day that I've been coming into the studio and recording and posting these episodes, like this is what's been going on in the background of that. So when you see me celebrating my wins and posting about another 10K on TikTok, another 10K on Instagram, that is the only fucking thing that's keeping me going. That and you guys. Every single person that reaches out to me and DMs me and says how much I've been helping them, like, I'm just brainwashing myself, saying it's gonna be worth it, it's gonna be worth it, it's gonna be worth it. Just keep doing what you're doing. And lastly, I just wanna move forward. I am all for friendly competition, but only when it's done fairly. Start a new podcast like I did. Don't take from someone else just so you can get ahead. And if none of this happens, I can promise you, I will make more lemonade out of my lemons, like I always do. You now have all of the facts. You have the truth. I am done giving energy to this beyond sharing what I now have. My success will be my revenge. I'm sure there will be another rebuttal after this, but I can promise you I am done using my energy to worry, to stress. I will use my energy to grow and to create. You have my word that I will be open with all of you. I will be vulnerable, truthful, and as raw and real as I possibly can, because that's the kind of podcast you deserve to listen to, the kind of person you deserve to rely on. It's like I said the other day, the universe only gives its toughest battles to its strongest soldiers. And I will fight like one. Who knows? One day, maybe I'll look back at this and laugh, because 600,000 followers will be nothing compared to what I'm gonna do. If you have ever been stolen from or erased or betrayed, just know you are not alone. It happens all the time to a lot of good people. My parting words of wisdom: a lion never loses sleep over the opinion of a sheep. Remember that. Even though I haven't been able to sleep in 3 months, whatever, I'm fucking getting there. So, thank you guys so much for humoring me, for listening to me, for giving me the time and space to tell this story. Hopefully this is the fucking end of it. Hopefully there's not some crazy TikTok back and forth. I really feel like I'm above that. This even took a lot out of me to do. I didn't want to. People told me not to. People were like, just let it go, let it go. And I'm like, that is not in my nature to roll over when something wrong is done to me. So I don't know. We'll see what happens after this. Leave your comments below if you have any personal opinions on the matter, or if you have any questions. I am happy to answer any question you have on what went down. I'm happy to provide any proof, any more screenshots, any more emails, any more like whatever. I had to put together an entire Google Drive for my lawyer. Everything is labeled, dated. I've got folders on folders. It is so organized and very user-friendly. Who knows? Maybe I'll start a Justin Baldoni website and you guys can all just browse. Probably not, because that would be crazy. But thank you guys. I just like hope you see the truth in this, and that you know that that was all from the bottom of my heart. I'm not trying to tear anyone down. I am trying to rise above. That's all. I'm not even going to ask for 5 stars on that one. I will see you guys next week.